Hello, welcome to another up close video. So today's one is another Arteza one. I haven't done an Arteza one for quite a while because I've had all of these gorgeous watercolour goodies to play with, and I've spent like probably 3 months and I still haven't gotten around to filming the video. But I've been having a really great play with everything. I'm sorry about the lighting in this video. It is so gloomy outside today, so I've tried to put as many lights on as I can, but they're all sort of casting weird shadows, so sorry about that, but hopefully it's not too annoying. But anyway, I've got tons to show you. So I've got the Tube Watercolours from Arteza, the 100% cotton watercolour paper, the 100% cotton watercolour postcards. They also do greetings cards as well. The large watercolour book, like the journal kind of a book. Then an empty half pan tin as well, so that you can make your own palette with all of your watercolours too. Oh, and also before I forget, this will be the first thing in the description below the video, but if you're placing an order on either of the Arteza websites, the UK one or the USA one, if you use the code CRaFTiPotential6, which I'll leave as the first thing in the description so you can copy it and paste it into the promotion code kind of box on the website, it'll give you 10% off your order, and it's valid until the 15th of November 2020 as well. And all of the links below the video are affiliate links to both the Arteza website, so if you click those links and then use the code, you'll be supporting me by earning me a small little commission with no extra cost to yourself as well. So thank you so much to everybody who orders, because it really does make a difference. But I thought I'd let you know about the 10% off, because then you get something out of it too. And then I've got all of these bits and pieces to show you, and I did want to have like a few finished kind of like pieces of artwork to show you as well, but the ones that I tried doing, I didn't like how they were turning out, and I'm not very patient with watercolours, which is why I wanted to get these to try and get better at watercolours. I think I have improved, but I'm still not there yet. But I thought I wanted to get this video done so that you can have a look at the different watercolour products that Arteza do, and like a little kind of comparison between these three kind of papers as well, for like what kind of artwork or card making you want to do as well. And I also wanted to show you how I've set up my watercolor palette too. And then I've got multiple little bits and pieces just to show you of like different bits that I was trying out and, you know, playing with to get different kind of effects that would be really great for cards as well. So first of all, let's look at the actual paints, considering this video is probably going to be titled the Tube Watercolour Paints from Arteza. So I got sent the 60 set of watercolours to play with. They are, what milliliter of tube? I think they're 12 millilitres. Oh, it doesn't actually say it on there. Yeah, 12 millilitres. So you get 60 12 milliliter tubes, which is the same size as the gouache as well. If you haven't seen my Arteza gouache video, I filmed that, must be like 18 months ago maybe, or nearing 18 months ago now. But if you haven't watched that, go and watch that too, because I'm pretty sure I showed you other techniques and like how you can mix in oxgall with your paints to try and increase the wettability of them, or it might have been in my half pan video for the pan watercolours that Arteza do as well. But I'll make sure to link both of those at the end of this video so you can go and check them out in case you haven't seen them, because there's ideas and like hints and tips, I suppose, that would correspond to these watercolours as well. So instead of repeating myself, I'll just direct you to those videos as well. But we have a fantastic array of colours in this set of watercolours, and since I did my gouache video, Arteza have now brought out empty watercolour palettes, so you can get this is the 48 one. They also do the 24 one, which is sort of half the width of this one. But I wanted the 48 one because I did something different with it. You do need to buy 12 extra half pans if you want to do what I did, but they're readily available on eBay or Amazon. You can easily pick up like they're usually in like packs of 50 or 100 for a really reasonable price, and then you can use them for any other kind of palettes that you might want to set up, just using like an old little mince tin, or I don't know, even the tin from the watercolor postcards, you could turn that into a palette once you finish with all the postcards as well. But anyway, so the empty half pan box, it comes like this, and I think this looks identical to their actual half pan set as well, but it's obviously just empty with all the half pans in there. But you might notice when I open it, it's very messy, I haven't cleaned it, but you might notice that it looks a little bit different, you see, because these pans are all white, because they weren't the clear ones that came with the set, but they're also not in the traditional like way they're supposed to be laid out like this in 4 different rows, because inside this pan or this box you get this piece that is to hold 48 of your little half pans, and to get them to fit really nicely into the little slots, you see that you've got all of these like metal pieces along here. The idea of this curled metal piece is to clip the little half pan in place. So before you put your half pans in, if you push them slightly inwards like this, when you put your half pans in, they will clip into there really nicely, and they won't slide up and down the channel. They'll stay nicely in there. So if you did accidentally drop it, you know, they would stay, the little pans would stay in place. But so I took this piece out. It's really easy. You've got these 2 little kind of handle pieces on the side. You can just pull that out, which makes it easier for like cleaning your box as well. If you've got like messy paint everywhere, you can take all of your paints out, keep them safe, and clean the whole tin. But I wanted to take that out because that only fits 48 paints, and there are 60 in this set. When I set up my gouache palette, I didn't mind so much that I could only fit 48 in my tin, because there were 12 metallics in that set, so I put the 12 metallics in a different tin. But I wanted to have them all together in this tin, because I thought I'm probably going to use them more, you know, if they're all sort of sitting there, and having them in just this little footprint is quite a nice way of having them. So instead of using the insert, I've just saved that in case I want to put it back in one day, because what I've done here is easily reversible. And then all I did was, so I got the 12 extra half pans, although I actually had a whole pan, so I've used a whole pan for the white in case you know, I wanted to add more white for whatever reason, maybe try and make it really opaque and do some splattering and stuff with it. But I decided to do it that way. So you could just have 12 half pans there, but you can fit 11 half pans and a full pan if you want to. And then what I did is I labelled all of my half pans first. So I took you know, the Sharpies that have the fine point on one end, like the really fine sort of what do they call it? It's like the little plastic sort of nib, the really fine one that's like a couple of millimetres across. I used that end of a Sharpie to write on them, and that works really well for the clear half pans that come in this set, and for the white ones if you buy them extra if you want to do this as well. And then I decided on my order of them too, and actually I haven't actually done a swatch sheet for this set of watercolours, because they're pretty much what you see really. That is the colour that they dry, so I didn't feel like I needed the actual swatch sheet to know what they look like. But the swatch that I was following, or the order that I was following, is actually from the Arteza website. So if you go on to the Arteza website, or click my link below to the set of 60 tube watercolours, you can scroll across the different photographs, and one of them is this, which is their colour chart that they've done, and it is 5 columns of 12 different paints. But I really liked the way that they had laid it out, that all of these pastel tones were all down one side, so I just transposed this onto my palette. So literally you're turning the orientation of this chart and then placing it into this palette, because there are 5 rows of 12, and then if you take that insert out, you can get 5 rows of 12 in your tin. So that is the colour chart that I followed to get this exact layout. So that's how I did that, which is, you know, really easy, because it's exactly like just there on the website where you buy the paints from. And then to get all of these to stay in there, I'm not going to tip it because some of them have cracked a little bit, and I've also been using them this morning, so some of them are a little bit wet. But the half pans won't fall out because what you do is you take some of the Arteza foam tape. It's just, not sure how wide that is actually. Is it ½ inch? Yes, it's ½ inch there, foam tape, and it's really strong adhesive. It is quite a squishy foam tape, but that actually doesn't matter for what we're using it for. We want this strong adhesive that's on there. So what I did, you can actually see it in here as well, and you can actually see it underneath the paints because they're in clear pans. But if you look down here, you can see there are strips of tape running across. So all I did was I started in the middle to try and get my spacing good, and so I ran a strip of the foam tape down the middle of the tin, and then I started placing in those 12 half pans, and I actually kind of divided them to be like 4, 4 and 4 with a little extra gap between. That's how you could see the tape there. And then you just add 2 rows above, 2 rows below. And I found starting in the middle was easiest because the tin curves at the edges. So this end is fine, but where I've added that full pan in, I wanted to make sure there would definitely be enough room. And if you start too close to one end, you'd have a weird gap at one side. But I thought that would be the best way to do it. Obviously the top row is slightly offset from the 4, 4, 4 pattern because I've put a whole pan in the end there. But if you just did 12 half pans, it would look more uniform. And you could also have gotten the clear half pans as well. I just, I don't know why I went for the white ones actually, but anyway, I went for the white ones anyway. But it works quite well because I actually put all of the pastel colours in the white ones. So I thought that was quite a good way of adding the white ones into it as well. And then once you've got all of them stuck in there with the empty little pans, obviously press them down really nicely. As you're putting the pans in and pressing them onto the tape, make sure you're putting them in the correct order. So have that little colour chart up as a reference to make sure you're definitely putting them in the right order. Then as well, order your paints into that order as well. Doing it like that makes it quicker, and also it makes it much quicker for later on when you want to refill this. The paints will be in the same order, so it'll be much easier to find the colours to refill certain half pans as well. And then all you want to do is add your paint to your half pans. All of mine, I only filled halfway with the paint, and then I left the whole thing open so that it could dry. Then once it had dried, it kind of shrunken down a little bit. So I did then add another dollop of each of the paints in each of the pans too, to try and get it to amalgamate all the little bits, because it does dry quite cracky. I mean, you can see lots of the colours are quite cracky there. It doesn't particularly matter. The only time it does kind of matter is earlier actually when I was doing another little experimenty thing. The yellow, I was using the yellow, and because it had some really small cracked off pieces in it, as I picked it up in my brush, I then had a little cracked piece like stuck in the bristles of my brush. So when I put it to the paper, I then got like a weird concentrated line, because it was kind of like having a watercolour crayon that scraped across the surface as I dragged my brush across it, if that makes any sense. So that is the kind of only downside of having them dry and the fact that they crack. But other than that, I have quite enjoyed using them in this pan setup because it's a lot less, takes up a lot less space as you're working, and also you don't have to have thought about what colours you want to use before you start working, if you know what I mean. You've just got them all there ready for you, so you can pick whatever colour you want to use for that project. But a couple of days ago, I did try using them fresh. So I just got a small little palette like this. Obviously they're all dried now, but I had the rosy colour and orangey colour, sap green, Prussian blue perhaps, and the violet. And I was working on a couple of different pieces, but I did really enjoy working with them from the wet paint as well. I have heard, or like, I suppose it's just sort of second nature really, because if you use acrylic paints or gouache, you kind of use them in that thicker manner, and I've heard that people get through more of their watercolours if they've used them straight from the tube, because you know it's there and you kind of tend to use it in a more thick manner. So when I was using them fresh from the tube, I was really aware of that I didn't want to use them too thickly, and actually I ended up getting a subtler colour using them fresh from the tube than from the pans, because I was aware that I might use too much. So it was quite nice actually to work with them from the fresh, because it made you think a little bit differently and add more water to them, I suppose, because it's I don't know, it's tricky sometimes working from the sort of cake of a watercolour or squeezed out tubes, because you've got to transfer paint to there, and then you don't want to run out of the colour, because you know, if you're doing a large area you kind of got to mix enough colour, but then if you've got two colours next to each other or something, then you don't tend to add enough water, so it ends up being a darker tone. Whereas with this, I was taking out a small bit of the paint, moving it to another well and mixing it up to get a more watered down version of the colour. So I don't know, there's kind of advantages and disadvantages of each way of using these, but I did really enjoy working with them fresh from the tube. The only like downside of using them fresh from the tube is, I guess, that you have to kind of have this whole box out, and when you open this box, I haven't even shown you inside yet, have I? But when you've opened this box of watercolours, this is the same way that the gouache was packaged, but the set I had had black trays back then. But you get them like this, so if you're being a bit indecisive and you're not 100% sure what colours you want to use, you've kind of got to have all of these trays out, or have like a basket with them all in, or you know, something that then you've got to dig through and try and find the colour that you're looking for. So it's kind of like they're all, you know exactly where each colour is, and they're all there for your convenience if you use the dried out method of having them in the tin already for you. So I don't know, it is difficult to decide what's the best way to use them, but I think both ways of using them is really nice, and I love that Arteza now do the empty tins so that you've got the option. And also this is fantastic for the gouache paints as well. The gouache paints don't seem to crack as much as the watercolours, and the way you want to work with the gouache is you want it to be kind of that creamy consistency, so it doesn't matter if you've added like a lot of water to your little pans and you're mixing it up and stuff. That's kind of what you want to do. So I think maybe pan wise maybe works better for gouache than for the Arteza watercolours, but it's an option, you know. If you prefer working from a pan and you want the variety of 60 colours from this set rather than only 36 colours in the actual pan set of watercolours that Arteza do, it's nice to have that option to be able to make your own pan set basically. So I've rambled on for quite a while just about the watercolour paints, but I have really enjoyed them, and they do have all of their information on them. They've got their name, it tells you if they're transparent, semi-transparent or opaque. It's also got the light fast rating and like pigment numbers and stuff on them too. I think if you look too much into watercolour, you really can go down a rabbit hole of like getting into pigment numbers, and you want to use single pigment colours and stuff so that when you mix your colours it's not going to be too muddy, and you know, you want transparent colours so that you can layer them and do like glaze layers and all this kind of stuff, which is very interesting actually. But I think for us crafters, try not to look into them too much, because then you kind of go, oh no, I don't know where to start now, because you're like, well, I've put all of the colours in the palette, now have I got to go back and check which ones are transparent and which ones have only got one pigment number in them, so that, you know, that I can only use those ones in a piece, and it gets quite confusing. So I think for us crafters, just have fun playing with them, but it's got all of that information there if you're more into that kind of side of watercolouring really. I do find it really interesting, but I think it's a bit too much at the moment to wrap my head around. I think I just need to get better at the actual watercolouring before I worry about pigments and transparency and opacity and stuff, but it is nice to kind of know a little bit about it, so that like when you're working you can kind of be like, oh, that's why that didn't work. Like if you've mixed a yellow and a blue together and you've got a really icky kind of green colour rather than a bright green that you were expecting, it might be that the blue was made up of like 3 different pigments and the yellow was made up of 2, so then you've actually got a 5 pigment green, and you might find out that 2 of those pigments always make a browny tone, and that's why you've got a murky coloured green. So it is quite interesting, but there is a lot of stuff to learn about it, and I think you need a lot of time to learn all of that kind of stuff. But I think over the years I think I'll probably look into it more because it is interesting. But anyway, I've probably bored you with that now. But yeah, I think just have fun with these. I think they're really nice, reasonably priced paint. Like you get a lot of colours for the price of the set, and they're going to last you a long time. Like so I've technically filled the half pans twice, because I filled it like half full once, let it dry, and then squirted another bit in, and I've been using a bit of them with fresh colours as well. And this yellow is the one I've used the most actually, because I started another palette as well, and you can see there's still loads in there. I haven't even used half of it yet. Yeah, the other palette I wasn't going to show you, but maybe I will. So the other palette that this was when I was going down the rabbit hole of warm yellows and warm reds and cool reds and warm blues and cool blues and the pigment numbers and all that kind of mixing stuff. So I tried making myself a little palette that just has yellow, red and blue, which are the primary colours, and I also just put in here, I was using this earlier so it's all still wet, I put a couple of my Gansai Tambi pearlescent watercolours in here, because we haven't got the pearlescent or the metallic watercolours from Arteza in the UK, which is a bummer because I really wanted to try them, but they're only available in the US, so I'll link them below in case you're interested in those too, because it looks like a really good set. But yeah, I decided to try and make this palette, and I've also put a white gouache in there rather than the white watercolour paint, in case I wanted to mix any sort of really pastel chalky looking colours as well. But I tried to make this kind of a palette. That's why that yellow was less, because I've also squeezed out enough to go in these whole pans as well. I haven't had a chance to properly experiment with this, but I was mixing a couple of greens for a project yesterday and a purpley colour and stuff, and it's really fun to try and mix your own colours. So there are smaller sets of watercolours that Arteza do. You don't have to go for a 60 set. I think there's a 12 set and possibly 24 or 36 as well. So I'll make sure those are linked below too, in case you're interested in starting off with a smaller set. And if you do start with a smaller set, you can have more fun with your colour mixing, whereas this set it's all done for you, so you don't actually really need to mix many colours really. I mean, you might want to have like a murkier green for, you know, if you're doing something with a lot of foliage and you want that mixture of, or variety of lots of different green tones to be able to use. But yeah, I think limiting your palette sometimes is a really nice way to go, so that's why I made this little palette, because I wanted to have a go at that, but I haven't properly been able to explore it enough. I wanted to do like the little colour wheel of like the more cooler colours, the more warmer colours, and then cross-pollinating across them to like see all the different shades of green and orange and purple that you could make from them and stuff, and different grey tones and things. But that's another idea that you can do with your watercolours too. You can just I didn't actually, so like these aren't definite cool colours and warm colours, they were just what I saw to be cool colours and warm colours, so they might not work as well as, you know, I'm hoping they will, but it's still fun to experiment and have a play with all that kind of stuff too. So that's like another little way of doing it, or making up a little mini palette for you to work with as well. So anyway, I think I've rabbited on about the watercolours enough. I'll be back in a second to talk about watercolour paper. Okay, so I'm just going to briefly show you some of the different watercolour papers and books and stuff that Arteza do. So one of their newest additions is this gorgeous little tin, and it's actually got blank watercolor postcards in it, and they are the 100% cotton paper that is in their expert range, and you get a gorgeous little tin with the lovely Arteza logo embossed in it. And this is what I was saying, you could convert this into a palette if you just bought a load of half pans and did the method of sticking them down with the foam tape. You could easily make this gorgeous thing into a little watercolor palette as well. So you know, think about other little tins that you have around, because they can really work for these kind of things. And these are the lovely postcards that you get in there. So they just say Arteza on them, you've got a place for your postage stamp and your address and to write something, and then you can just have fun decorating the front of them. And if you're worried about doing a watercolour and then putting it through the post and, you know, it might get wet, you could laminate this. So you'd obviously want to write everything on here first, then you could laminate it and then put your postage on there. Or you could use like that micro glaze that Ranger do, or I've used Vaseline before in a similar way. I'm not sure how it would work over the top of watercolour, but it could be an option. Or you could use some kind of like spray varnish that would kind of seal it in as well. So there's lots of different ways of making sure your artwork doesn't get destroyed in the post as well. Or you could obviously just plop it in an envelope too. Or if you didn't want to do a postcard and you wanted to do the card in the envelope idea, they do also now do 100% cotton cards and envelopes as well. So you could do that too if you'd rather. You could get those as well if you'd rather than having postcards. But I thought postcards are a really fun idea, because you can just have fun painting something on one side and then just send it to cheer someone up. So I thought it was a really nice idea. And I love the little tin that they're in as well. I'm a sucker for a little tin. Like, I just love tins. They're so lovely. But yeah, so they any of these things will work with the tube watercolours that I've shown you, the pan watercolours that you can get, and the gouache, and, you know, all kinds of watercolour mediums. All of these bits and pieces will work with. So if you've got any other brands of watercolours or ink filled like water brush pens and stuff, it should all work with everything. This pad of watercolour paper is the 32 sheets of expert watercolour paper. This is the pulp based paper, so not the cotton paper, and I've shown you this multiple times in lots of different videos, because you can see I've used it a lot, and with all these kind of pads with the 32 sheets, you actually get 2 in a pack. Although I was looking on the website a little while ago, and I'm sure they were now doing like 1 of a pack of paper like this, or maybe it was a spiral bound one or something, but I think they might now be doing sort of like 1 of something rather than having to buy it in a 2 or 3 pack as well, which is really nice. But yeah, if you get 2 packs, you know, you've got stuff to go for quite a long time, which is brilliant, and a lot of practicing, which is great. Like, knowing that you've got 64 sheets to play with is brilliant. And I think this is quite a nice paper to practice on. As I said before, I'm no way an expert on watercolouring, and I'm still not very good at it. But obviously the key to anything, getting better at anything, is to practice. So I think knowing that you've got another pad of paper is quite nice, because you don't feel like, you know, every sheet is precious. You can actually practice with an entire pad of paper then if you need to. Or instead of practicing on paper, you can also go for their Watercolor books as well. They do, I finally got the big one. I said in my acrylic pouring video, I think, that I really wanted the big sketchbook that they do. I've got here, this is the small one that I poured on, that's why it was in that video. But yeah, you can see how much bigger. This is a 6-inch square and this is 8-inch square. So I thought the 8-inch one would be really good for me for practicing watercolour, because I will be using the small 6-inch one for watercolouring as well. But I think when you're practicing, sometimes it's nicer to have a bigger area to work on, because I know it's more space to fill, and on some of the pages I've done in here, I have just kind of done like one thing on a page, but having a bigger area, you could split it up and do multiple different things and it not feel so kind of like as a precious page, because you're just doing one piece on it. You can use it for multiple different kind of projects as well. But yeah, this is the Watercolor Books. This is the 8-inch one. You get these in a pack of 2, and I think the little ones come in a pack of 3. So depending on, you know, maybe you've got a friend that would like one too, or with these ones you could have one as your practice one and one as you've got better, or you could just use them both as like progression. I mean, have 2 as practice ones and go all the way through them as like starting off with your really beginner kind of, maybe watching some YouTube videos, or getting a watercolor instructional book and practicing your brush strokes and things. That's what I need to do, but I'm always too lazy to do it, and I just want to be able to make something straight away. But I do think it's a good idea to practice, and I really do want to go back and try and do all of that and actually get better at watercolouring. I just need to find the time to do it. But yeah, this is the Watercolor Book. I think it's really nice, actually. I've quite enjoyed working on it. I've only done a few things that I'll show you in a minute. But it's got a mixture of a kind of slightly textured, not too textured, and then the, like, every so often you get the smooth side of it as well. So the paper is textured on one side and smooth on the other, and I've worked on both different sides, and I do really like both of the sides. You have got to be careful with tape. I bought some of that delicate surface painter's tape, but it still kind of tore the surface a little bit. I probably just wasn't being very careful, and I'd also applied a lot of water to that page. I'm amazed at how well this page stood up. I mean, it has buckled, but not much though. I've probably wetted this page about 6 times with a lot of water each time, and it's still pretty straight. I mean, if you'd done that to a piece of cardstock, just regular cardstock, or the page in a non-watercolouring sort of a sketchbook, that would sort of have fallen apart by now probably. But so I think this is a really nice sturdy kind of book, and I think these would be great for your art journals as well. I definitely want to use my other big one as an art journal too, because the ones I tend to use, I usually buy cheap ones because I'm like, oh, I don't want to be too precious over it. But I think investing a little bit more and getting a more watercoloury kind of one, so the pages are thicker and they're going to stand up to more stuff, is definitely a good place to start as well. And I think these would be great for art journaling. So that is the Watercolor Book, and then I've also got here the Expert cotton watercolour paper. So although these both say Expert, there is also a 32 pad that's premium as well. I've never tried that one, but I've seen in other people's videos it's got like a line kind of texture, which I think would be really nice. You know, for card making and stuff, you could really emphasise that kind of liney texture. But these two are both in their Expert range, but look at the number of sheets. That's the important part. If you want to go for the pulpy kind of paper, you want the 32 sheet pack. If you want to go for the cotton paper, it's the 14 sheet pack, because obviously cotton is more expensive than wood pulpy paper, more difficult to make and all that, and it's got different sizing and stuff on it. I've used a few sheets, maybe 3 or 4 sheets for some different bits and pieces that I'll show you, and I do really like it. It's very different from working on this kind of paper. When you're so used to working on something that doesn't hold the moisture as much, it's really strange going to something that does hold the moisture a lot. But it's been really fun to work on. I really wanted to give it a go, and I think I'll definitely be using this more in the future as well. Maybe more when I've got more practice under my belt, so that, you know, I'm more confident with my painting and stuff. But it's really interesting the way, because it's cotton, it holds the water more, so the paper stays wet longer, and the colour then bleeds more, because obviously the paper is wetter all through the fibres and everything, and it's probably got longer fibres in because it's cotton. It kind of spreads more, and it's not what you're expecting, really. Not what I'm used to when I've been trying watercolouring before. So, but I think it's I think flowers would look fabulous on it, because you want that kind of ethereal effect. Or I think it's really great for getting that first background down, like the underpainting, and then once you haven't soaked the paper, obviously you can get the better details on it then, because it's not completely soaked with water. But, you know, for the kind of initial backgrounds where you're really wetting the background, you really do notice the difference between the cotton paper and the wood pulpy paper. So if you love your blended background techniques, whether you're just using watercolours or whether you're going to use like pixie powders and Nouveau shimmer powders and stuff, I think this paper is going to really help you get that cool blended look that you might be after as well. It doesn't work as well for some of the kind of watercolory techniques, and I'll show you that in a second. You know, like with salt and cling film and stuff, because it holds so much moisture in it, you don't get as bold of a result maybe. But yeah, I've really enjoyed working with all the different types of paper, so I'll show you a few examples of that now. It's got even darker in here now, so I've just turned another light on, but I'm hoping it's not too fuzzy. It kind of looks a bit fuzzy on my viewfinder, but hopefully it's alright. So I was having a lot of fun just sort of playing with the watercolours when I got them, and I decided to work in this book first of all. I left the first page. I don't know what it is, so I leave 2 pages, yeah. I don't like using the first pages because I feel like it sets the whole tone for the whole book. But anyway, I decided to try drawing my own mandala. So what you do is you can get a pair of compasses and then just pick a spot and keep drawing circles at different degrees all inside each other, and then you can get a protractor and divide it at different angles, or you can just eyeball it as well. Just like making sure the lines come back through the centre and stuff, and then you can have fun like drawing your own kind of mandala. I watched I think her name is Creation CC, or it could be CC Creations, but she'd done something similar to this, and I really liked the concept of drawing your own mandala. So I started off with something simple, just doing that, and I just watercoloured in kind of like flat colours, trying to use them in a very watery kind of manner. I had started to come back in and shade little bits as well, but I'd got sidetracked by other bits and pieces too, so this isn't really finished yet. But just a fun kind of way that you could play with your watercolours. I thought I'd show you that. Then my next playing thing was I was sitting here and I had my curtains pulled because it was really dark, and my curtains inspired me basically. This is the pattern that's on my curtains minus all the splashes and stuff on there, but it really inspired me to kind of try and just have fun and do a loose kind of design that looks a bit like what I was looking at. It's not exactly the same, but it's a similar kind of representation. And then I also wanted to try it out on some of the different watercolour papers as well. So this is one of the, because this is just, I don't think this is cotton, I think this is the wood pulp kind of paper. Then this was the cotton postcards. And then these two are the cotton paper. This one I decided to doodle on top of using, where are they? I was doodling with these pens because I wanted to try them on top of the textured watercolour paper. It is harder to draw neatly with the texture because obviously it's a bumpy texture, but both of these were working quite nicely, and they weren't bleeding out too much. They still stayed quite nicely on the paper. Even though it was cotton, it wasn't bleeding out too much, which was nice. I think I used the 0.7 on that, that's why it's like a thicker kind of a line, but I was just having fun doodling some designs onto those as well. And then for something different, I brought out my metallic gouache, or is it pearlescent that they call it, either metallic or pearlescent, the gouache paints, and I was doodling on top. Is it even going to catch there, sort of? Yeah, I think you can get it there. It's a little bit sparkly. So I was doodling with watercolour and then also with the pearlescent gouache paint as well. Not quite finished. I think I will add some more details in, because this kind of portion, I suppose maybe I just didn't finish this one either. It's kind of based on this part of it and this part, even though it's the opposite way round. It's a loose representation of what my curtains look like. And then this one I hadn't doodled on yet because I wanted to show you. So the way I was doing these like pattern pieces is I took my paintbrush, sopping wet with water, and drew like the shape, and then I dabbed the paint in, and it gives this like feathering effect, or like the lighter colour is there and then the darker colour is less. That's kind of what I meant about it sort of seeping out and going with the paper being wet and stuff. So I thought it gives an interesting look, but if you don't like that, when you go back over and, you know, like paint details over the top or doodle an outline, it kind of disappears as well. But I wanted to kind of show that sort of, I think, was I using the different sides of the paper? No, it was all the same side. But yeah, I was just having fun trying to replicate my curtain pattern. And then this one, I added way more splashes on, and I've done more doodling on this one than I had on the other ones. But I really enjoyed that. I think starting off with a couple of projects where you can just have fun is a good way of playing with your watercolours. I definitely do need to practice more with like perfecting how you hold your paintbrush and twist it, or the pressure as well, because you know, you see you know, people painting on YouTube and stuff, and they can like take whatever shaped paintbrush they're using, like the cat's tongue one or a dagger or something, and I don't know how they do it, but they hold it in like the perfect position to be able to press down with a light pressure and then heavy pressure and then light pressure to get like the perfect looking leaf. I've tried it, it's really difficult, but I'm not very skilled in watercolour, so that's probably why it's really difficult. But I think this kind of like sketchbook, it would be nice actually to just have a few pages where you've just tried to practice. I suppose it's like with brush lettering and calligraphy, which I also want to try. You kind of have to practice, don't you, each letter, so you kind of practice the brush strokes and stuff. I really do need to properly sit down and do that kind of thing, but I just wanted to show you kind of like, this is me as a pretty much a beginner with watercolour. I've used it in the past, but never properly. I've never been able to master watercolour. I always mix my paint up too thickly and I don't get the transparency, and then so I can't do the kind of layering, or I get fed up and I want it to look finished straight away. But I know with watercolour you do have to get your first layer down and block in the colours and then come back and glaze over it and do like more washes and stuff. So I do really need to practice that kind of thing. But yeah, just as like a beginner coming into watercolour, I think I just wanted to show different ways of, you know, how you might start at home as well if you haven't tried it before, or if you're not very good at it like me. But yeah, I did that one, and then I was trying out the different kinds of papers as well. Then I was also, this is the cotton paper as well, I just wanted to try like a big wash of colour and really trying to build up the intensity of colour on here as well. Then I was sitting in front of the telly and I was doodling again with these two pens. I might have used the 0.5 on this one. And then I came in with one of these. These are the white chalk markers. I had these for doing a Halloween project. I was drawing on like glass panels that are in my porch, and they work really well for drawing on glass, but you can also use them in your crafting as well. It did kind of pick up the colour onto the tip, and obviously I'd been colouring some pink and then I went up and coloured this one and it's a little bit pink now. But you can also splatter with them as well. You can just pump them so there's a lot of ink in the tip of them, and then you can like tap it and splatter them. But they work really nicely for filling in. They don't completely block out the background colour, they kind of pick up, especially red tones. Reds are really bad for sort of picking up and stuff. But yeah, I could probably go back and do a second layer on these and it would probably fill it in quite nicely. Even that pink heart, yeah, it's pretty much going down. And these pens are really nice actually. They all come with this kind of nib on them, this like round bullet nib, but in the box with them, and you can get coloured sets of these as well, you don't have to just get the white ones, you can get multicoloured sets of them. I presume in the coloured ones this would come in there too, but in this white set you also get tweezers, and you get a whole packet of 12 nibs that give you the chisel nib. So if you can't get into the like fine detail with that bullet nib, you can actually swap it out and have a little chisel nib as well to try and use this pointy part to get into the fine detail. So I think that's really nice that they come with those. I didn't realise that they came with all of those as well. So I was using those with the watercolours too. Can you tell I was having fun just experimenting and playing with stuff? But yeah, that has kind of covered that now, I think. Looking much whiter where I added the second layer over the top. So, you know, if you don't want to paint white details back in, these chalk pens are brilliant for that. Just a couple of layers. Let's try on the bottom here as well. See if, oh wow. Okay, I think that is covering much nicer. You can really see that's looking white now rather than the pink. Might come through pink again, maybe 3 layers on some really heavily pinky red pigment sort of places, but that's really good actually. So these white chalk markers, brilliant for going over the top of your watercolouring. Then, oh, I was doing this kind of experiment as well. I'll show you these next. So this was experimenting on the smooth white card that I use all of the time, the cotton watercolour postcards, the cotton paper, and also in the mixed media pad. I got these ones when I was doing the gouache video, so I've had this one for a long time, but it's their mixed media. I think they do these in single books now, so you can just buy one to try it out, but their mixed media paper, I wanted to see how the watercolours behaved on that as well, and with some of like the typical watercolour techniques as well. And if you're just looking at all 4 of those, you can instantly tell that these 2 worked better for these typical watercolour techniques. So this end is the cling film technique and this end is the salt technique. And so with both of these techniques, you kind of want quite a wet background, and then for this one you scrunch up the cling film, and the more concentrated pigment kind of collects between all of the little channels, or if you had any mica in there, all the mica would collect at the little channels as well, because where the cling film's made contact with the paper, it kind of pushes the pigment away. And then the salt effect, which is on the top end of these, I use a mixture of table salt, sea salt and rock salt to get the different sized granules. And the way this works is salt kind of draws all the moisture towards it, and so obviously it's kind of concentrating the pigment around it and collecting the moisture in the little pellets of salt, and then giving you this kind of like ring texture around where the salt was, which gives a really lovely technique for not necessarily just using it on backgrounds, but if you're doing like an actual piece of artwork and you've got like crunched up leaves or something, or maybe some sea or seaweed, or you know, stuff like that where you want a kind of texture underlayer, and then you could like paint over it as well, maybe even in like bark on a tree and stuff, and then you could paint over, but you've got that like subtle sort of texture underneath. But anyway, these 2 cards worked the best for it, because this is the mixed media paper and this is my generic white cardstock that I use all the time. And the reason why they work better is because they don't stay wet as long. So what I was saying earlier about the cotton paper really staying wet and holding the moisture in, these kind of techniques don't work as well because of that property. So it's interesting to, like, obviously a lot of the people that I've seen using watercolours and stuff, they're all like, yeah, 100% cotton paper, it's the best kind of thing. But for us crafters, actually, sometimes it's not the best, because we want to do all these cool techniques and stuff, but because of that property of the paper holding the moisture in and stuff, they don't work as well, or they're not as evident. You can see the cling film on the top side of both of these, but it is very subtle. Because of the way, I think it's because of the way the paper has sort of stayed moister for longer, and I guess the pigment doesn't want to kind of gather as much as it does on these ones. It kind of just stays more where it is, and actually the crinkles are kind of lighter in colour than darker in colour on this one. But it's really interesting to see that. And then also with the salt as well, it's given a different look actually, which is quite interesting, but it's not the look that you kind of expect from salt. It's given a different kind of a look, and I'm not sure why this one is so much paler, because I was using the same colours and I was using them all from fresh paint for these ones as well, and making sure I had a puddle of it that was at the same concentration for all of the different ones that I was trying. So I'm not sure why that one came out paler, and this one too. I'm guessing it is something to do with the cotton paper. I don't know, maybe I suppose because it stays wetter for longer, maybe it absorbs it into the core of the paper more, I'm not sure. But yeah, it gave a lighter kind of result. So I was playing with that sort of experiment. Then the next thing I was playing with was this new stamp from the Make Merry release from Simon Says Stamp. I had done 3 different experiments. So this one's not stamped very well, which is kind of why I ended up in the experiment, because I'm sure a lot of you stamp in this ink. This is the VersaFine Onyx Black. It's just in the Clair ink pad, because I didn't have a re-inker for the Clair, but I had a re-inker for the Onyx Black, so I put it in this pad because I like this pad better. So it is the VersaFine Onyx Black in here. But I know a lot of us will probably use this when we're watercolouring, because you can like heat set it and then it will be really stable. So I wanted to see, because the cotton paper holds the moisture and stuff, would it disrupt this ink? Because a lot of the time, actually, why I'm like annoyed by watercolours when I'm doing card making, and why I always tend to go for my alcohol pens, is because I often stamp with this kind of an ink, or even a permanent ink as well, and it does like really weird things. Like you paint up to the line and then it kind of, the colour kind of bleeds back away from it, and you're like, why is that happening? It makes it look awful. But so I wanted to do some experiments with the cotton paper and the Arteza watercolours and this ink, and just stamping in this ink and then covering the paper in loads of water and paint and going back over it when it's dry and stuff, and the outline didn't move at all. So this is a really good combination of the 100% cotton paper and this VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Worked really well. And then for these two, I was playing with, this was my dried paints and this was the fresh paint, and on both of these as well I had actually clear heat embossed the images too. And again, so this was the same 3 colours, but I was using these ones from my dried palette of paint and these ones from my fresh palette of paint, and you can see I got a paler background colour for this one, which is really odd. I think it must just be because I'm more aware that I want to not use them too thickly when they're fresh, that I ended up with a lighter tone for this one, or it could be that the paper sucked it in more, but then you see this one didn't, so I'm still not sure about that. But anyway, it gives a really nice effect. And then I just went back in and painted back in some of the detail. These ones I was just doing more solid colours on the leaves, and these ones I was trying to paint in some of the actual detail and stuff. So I wanted to show, you know, do a little experiment about using the dried paint versus the fresh paint, and using it with a stamp that I would use in my card making as well. So I think you get the same kind of effect. It's kind of like this almost a grainy kind of effect on this cotton paper for that background bit, but it's stronger with the dried paint. As I was saying earlier, I think I tend to mix them up stronger for some reason than I did with the fresh paint. But yeah, really interesting kind of results with that. Then I was experimenting with trying to actually paint something, you know, that wasn't just a cool background, or using a stamp, or, you know, that kind of thing. So I started off in here and I was trying to paint like an abstract sunflower. It's still not finished, but this was maybe like 3 layers of painting onto it, and that's the thing I really struggle with, is doing 1 layer, leaving it and coming back and working on it again. I really do struggle with that, but this is 3 layers worth, and I still want to work into it a bit more, maybe make it more a bit more mixed media, kind of maybe bringing in some collage or something metallic or glittery or something. I'm not really sure, but I was kind of giving this a go. I just googled sunflower painting, I think, and this was kind of one of the kind of things that came up that I thought I would have a go at trying to replicate. And then I thought, well, you know, I want to kind of experiment with this kind of a paper, an actual watercolour paper, and just going onto my smooth cardstock as well. And it does give slightly different kind of results, but I think it works just as nicely just using your regular cardstock. I think maybe it pulls differently, like the paint, if you've wet this paper with the texture, I suppose it kind of makes it fade off differently, whereas with this, because it's really smooth, it kind of just stays where you put it. But I was really enjoying trying this sort of abstract kind of a look, and the way that you can do it as an art journal page or as a card as well. Then if you Google or look on YouTube for like beginner watercolours, these kind of things always pop up. These cool flowers like this, where you kind of, you're playing with the transparency of the paint to get these kind of overlaps of the leaves or the petals, but you're kind of trying to concentrate the colour around the edge and drag it out of the middle to get this cool effect. So there are tons of videos on this, and I just found a picture and I tried to sort of replicate it. And then I was also having a go at another kind of floral as well. This is where I was trying to do that cool thing with a paintbrush where you do light pressure, heavier pressure, light pressure, and the leaves ended up very big because I kept going wrong and trying to correct it. But I still think it makes a really nice card. I could even come back in with some pencils or some sparkly gel pens or something and add a bit more detail and then just put a sentiment on. And I think these make really nice sort of proper handmade cards, because you've actually started from scratch and done a little watercolour painting as well. So I think they've all turned out pretty nicely. I'm quite happy with these. It did require patience though. I think on this one I was trying to do like one petal here and one over here, and then you know, once that was dry, come back and fill some other ones in and stuff. But it was quite a struggle being patient for this kind of layered sort of look. But I really do love how it turned out. So it does pay to be patient and wait for the layers to dry. You could use a heat gun as well, but I think it kind of dulls the colour if you use a heat gun. But yeah, I was really enjoying playing with those, so I did that too. And then also, if you Google or YouTube search beginner watercolour tutorial kind of things, there are hundreds of these kind of things as well, and I've always wanted to try one. The tape that I'd used did kind of rip the surface a little bit. I should have used a heat gun to pull it backwards, and it had also bled under there too. But this is the page I was saying hasn't warped that much, and I probably wet it about 6 times because I masked off the square and then I came in with the light tone of the colour, had to leave it to dry. Then I completely wetted it again, came on with the next tone of the colour to add some more cloudy sort of shapes in, had to leave it to dry, and then completely wet it again, and you know, kept building it up to try and get this cool, moody, dramatic kind of blue galaxy almost kind of a sky. And then also adding in the black around the edges to try and deepen up the edges too. I really enjoyed the process of this. These trees are also very hard to paint though. Everybody's like, oh, you just draw a stick up and then do little squiggly lines and blobs. It's very difficult to make them actually look like a tree. But I'm quite pleased with how this turned out. From where you're seeing it looks really good. Up close it's not quite as good. But from far away it looks quite nice. But these kind of things are great for practicing, building up layers, getting that kind of blended ethereal kind of effect for the sky as well. You probably could have done it all in one layer, but I was really trying to be patient and try to do the building up layers sort of thing. And something I did notice with these paints that was really nice actually is I put that first layer down, and when I completely wet it again, it wasn't budging. I think some watercolours are made to kind of move when you've completely re-wetted them again, but I really liked the fact that it stayed. So when I added the second layer on it, I wasn't completely disrupting what I'd already put underneath. So I really liked that about them. And then I was also experimenting with mixing colours. This colour isn't a colour in the set. I was mixing a bluey tone and a greeny tone together to get this kind of a colour, and also mixing in some grey to that colour to get some of this around the edges, and then just going straight for the black as well. And then I did just use the black to do the trees too, but you could use black gouache if you wanted it to be really nice and dark on there, or you could make it really sort of mixed medium and use acrylic on there too if you wanted to. But I think these kind of I think most of them are like tutorial kind of things on how you can make a galaxy sky with the trees. I think they're really good videos just to watch, to see the techniques, or to even give a go and try them out as well. So I really enjoyed doing that. And then I also, I've got so much to show you. I really hope this video is not too long. I have a feeling it's over an hour already. But then I was also then going more to the card making side, and I wanted to show the technique of using the watercolours through a stencil. So I'm sure I did this in my gouache video, or possibly the other watercolour video, but I just took a stencil and put it onto I cannot find the match now, but I put it onto the card, and then you just take your paintbrush. I was actually just using a round paintbrush for this one, but you can use a flat one if you don't want it to go under the stencil as much, and you could have used like a heavier stencil as well, so it wouldn't have moved as much. But then all you do is load up your brush with a colour of paint and just swipe it over the top, and then I added a couple different more colours in, and then you just pull it off and you get a really nice distressed kind of stencil look, because bits have blobbed underneath in places and you've lost some of the detail. But I do really like the way this turned out, and all you've got to do is like colour a mermaid or something, or a fish or a few fishes, and you know, you've got a finished card then, and it was a really, really quick background to do. So I love that kind of thing. Then this technique was kind of an accident, because I had left a watercolory background to dry, and a die cut had fallen on top of it, and obviously I'd gone off to bed and came down in the morning and I was like, oh no, a die cut's fallen in it, and then I peeled it off and it gave a really cool look. So I tried to recreate it, and it gives this fantastic look. All you do is, I left this one on there so I could show taking it off, but all you do is cut a few die cuts. So this was a Tim Holtz and Sizzix kind of one. I cut 5 of them. If I'd cut this out of the watercolour card, these would have been darker, but I actually just cut them out of a cheapy white card that I had. And then all you do is place them all over your background, wherever you want them. And you know, this can be a card front or an art journal page. So I just placed them all over, and then you just come in with your watercolours as if you were just making a watercoloury background, and splodge them all over it, get it nice and wet, add in some metallic, some darker colours, lighter colours and stuff, and then just leave it to dry overnight, and then you can just pick the die cuts off, and you get this really cool effect where like the die cut has almost sucked up the colour and left like a lighter outline where it was. So I think it's really cool. It looks like the die cuts are still on there. It's really cool. I really like this. I'd definitely be using this in some card making. And then while I was trying it out, I thought I'd just try a different die as well. So I'd also left this one on here, and you can just pull them off, you see. And then you can use these as well. I'll show you I've used them on a couple of cards too. I had added some of that pearlescent Gansai Tambi into these as well, but obviously you could use the Arteza ones if you have them. But I really love the effect that it gives, the way it gathers around the edge, but then the die cut kind of sucks it up, so it leaves a lighter impression. I think it's just really cool, and that could be the first layer of an art journal background. Then you can build up on top of it, but you've got that cool initial like textury pattern without using stencils. You just use your die cuts as well, so it gives them another use. So that's a really cool way to use your watercolours. Then a really quick and easy way of making some cards is to literally just paint a blob onto your cardstock and then stamp an image over the top. So these ones I thought turned out really nicely. Obviously I haven't finished them. You need to add a sentiment or something. It could be a die cut one, it could be a stamped one, and you could also go back into these and add some mica powder or some glitter or metallic paints as well and bring out some of the details, or white as well to bring out the centre of the flower and all that kind of stuff, so you can work back into them. But literally these blobs, literally seconds, all you do is do a blobby of one colour and then blob some more of another colour around the other side, or like pick 3 colours and just make a little blob, and then do a few little splashes outside of it, and then just stamp a flower over the top, or a flower and leaf, or a flower with a stem and a butterfly, and it just gives a really cool, quick, artsy looking card. And you could do like a whole set of these in a rainbow, and it'd be a really nice gift for somebody. And you could also, if you wanted to, instead of leaving the images black and white, you could then come in with slightly darker tones of these colours and actually colour the images in as well if you want to. So a really cool way of using your watercolours to make quick and easy cards. And then the final one was using those pieces that I took off that background, which is like a scribbly kind of a die. And then this was just taking, so you can do this with your distress inks and stuff, but obviously you can also do it with your watercolours, just taking an acrylic block and then painting on some watercolour. So I did a yellow, a coral and a red, and I just all over, random positions, spray it with a little bit of water, flip it over, squish it onto your card, pick a block that fits nicely on your desired size of cardstock that you like using, or you could use a circular one, you know, or a funny shaped one, or a long skinny one, whichever kind of shape you want to do. And then you pull it off and you get this really cool watercolour blobby pattern, which was seconds to do, rather than you trying to actually paint a rectangle and, you know, get the colours in and fussing with it too much. It's just instant. And then I still had enough paint on there just to spray it with a bit more water and get another one off as well. So again, a really nice, quick and easy way of using your watercolours for the card making as well. So I really hope you enjoyed this up close look at the Arteza tube watercolours and how to make them into a palette that has all 60 of the colours in as well, and lots of different examples of me attempting to do watercolour, and also just doing some fun little watercolouring kind of techniques and quick cards and stuff as well. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget, where did I put it? Don't forget, if you use the links below the video, they're my affiliate links, you can use the code CRaFTiPotential6 with them. This will be the first thing at the top of the description, so you can copy and paste it into the discount code box on the website when you go to check out. And using the links below will support me by giving me a small percentage of whatever you've spent at no extra cost to you. And this code will give you 10% off, and it's valid until the 15th of November as well. So I really do appreciate you using my links, any of them, whether it's Arteza ones or any of the other places that I link to below my videos. I really do appreciate it, and it really does make a difference. So thank you so much to anybody who has ever used one of my links in the past. I really do appreciate it. And I really love that Arteza give a 10% discount, and I'm very thankful for Arteza for sending me all these goodies to play with as well, because I really do enjoy it. Although this has taken me like 3 months to actually film this watercolour video, I really do enjoy playing with all their products and getting to kind of take a few days off just for myself, just to play with them, to get stuff ready for a video as well. So yeah, thank you so much to Arteza as well. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!